The zero RB landscape for 2025 after the NFL draft. What has changed over the course of years? We joked at the start, Kyle, off the show earlier this week about, you being a RotoViz OG, but we talked about it's 2013, a lot of the zero RB stuff was kicking off. We are now in 2025. It is kind of hard to believe. I did see earlier today somebody trading 2028 rookie picks, which I thought, is that correct? But we are moving along. That's the way time goes forward. But a lot has changed in the zero RB landscape. A lot has changed in how much it is adopted throughout the fantasy community. And then obviously the way the results went over the last particularly 12 months is going to impact how some of the ADP is set up this year. How are you feeling just overview of zero RB entering 2025? And I say entering 2025, we've been drafting for months, but at this point where regular people might consider drafting teams.
Yeah, I think I've been thinking about it a little differently with the way that the wide receiver prices have been going up, to where it used to be it was such an advantage in the 2010s. The zero RB could be like, yeah, well, I've got the wide receiver 1, the wide receiver 6, the wide receiver 11, the wide receiver 14 is in my flex, and for bye weeks I have the wide receiver 17. Like, you could just stack up the best wide receiver 1 for your roster, a second receiver, the third receiver. You could beat your opponents at
the goal is still this, Kyle. This is still the goal, to have 5 of the top 15 by the end of the season.
It is a lot harder now because your 5th wide receiver pick is like Jacoby Myers. Like, you were,
and you could also get rookies, more so rookies in the 9 through 13 round. Round 2.
I like that much more. I think it's part of the shift. I think that is a way to still construct these really good zero RB rosters is I'm probably dipping into running back a little earlier, because when I don't have a running back at all and the options are like James Conner or Jacoby Myers, I don't have a running back. James Conner was the player, he projected for 22 fantasy points in the fantasy championship last year. I think he got hurt and didn't play almost any of that game, but he projected for a lot of points in the fantasy playoffs last year, a ton. Or Jacoby Myers. At that point, I'm going to break ranks on the zero RB a little early. I have still started 3 receivers and a tight end, but I don't think your first running back comes in round 12 that you used to be able to do all the time, like in 2015. I don't think those zero RB rosters are as strong, in part because the increase in wide receiver prices has given us dead zone 2-3 turn type backs in the 5th and 6th round, where the downside is priced in and the upside is that you fill out that perfect need. So I'm still starting most of my drafts, most of my drafts receiver heavy, but I do think I'm much more comfortable dipping into what used to be 2-3 turn type of backs in the 5th or 6th round. Maybe it's not true zero RB anymore, but in the way the landscape has changed, I still think that should qualify, and that is how I want to do it. And like you said, I think the upside dies off very early at wide receiver because we're good at picking out upside. We know that Jacoby Myers is just never going to return you the wide receiver 7 overall season, but we still are probably a little undervaluing the ability of rookies to do that, to your point. I probably am very fine dipping in a running back early and saying I haven't quite won the race to the flex yet, but I might be winning the race to the flex in week 10, 13, 15, 17, because I go back with rookies specifically who still you can get in the double-digit rounds.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're going to try and do, is that whole picture of, how we're going to fill out the roster, how you would fill out the flex. Because when we look at it, the traditional kind of zero RB rounds, when you're looking at where we're going to dip into running back first, is 8 through 10 probably is where I would generally be saying you could go in at 7 if you want, but usually around 8 through 10 is where you'd be picking your first running back. But there's only 8 running backs going in rounds 8 through 10 this season at the moment. This is FFPC Best Ball Tournament ADP, and then 2 running backs in round 12. It's really a different picture than what it would have been. There's a lot of guys going beyond that. There's a lot of guys going before that, and the dead zone, as we would look at it traditionally, last year we were having some conversations. Has it moved? Has it shifted up, or has it maybe shifted down? Or are they just blended in with the zero RB guys? There is a bit of a shift again this season in trying to pick out which is which. I think is where the challenge will come in. But do we need to, and we've already started this, and I think the answer is yes. Do we need to adapt those plans as to how we're attacking these draft boards based on if the running backs aren't in that zone, or the running backs in that zone are not what we're looking about? It's all about the profiles of the players the trajectory of their career, the talent that they have, rather than like, well, he's going in round 7, so I can't take him. I have to take the guy in round 10 who is absolutely terrible.
Yeah, I know. You were like, I want to be a true zero RB bro. And you're like, I'd say it starts maybe 7. I'm like, ooh, Aaron Jones.
You can't say it's for life if you like change it in 2025, like,
Oh, but the landscape has changed, so my tattoo still counts. I can't go back and undo the tattoo, but I think there is, maybe it's just that like I'm over perceiving a tier gap. But getting James Conner, who like averaged 16 points per game last year, versus Aaron Jones, who like, boy, does that guy love soft tissue injuries. I think that's why I'm a little more comfortable doing like 3 receiver, like let's do Brock Bowers and 3 receivers kind of starts. And then in the 5th or 6th round, dipping into 1 running back. I still think you don't want to load up on the dead zone backs, because there's not very likely that you get to the end of the season and you have just killed your opponents loading up on these dead zone backs. But I do think we are very good at like projecting fantasy points in general. And if you try and start your draft by going a bunch of wide receivers and then Cam Scatterboo as your first running back, like you will not score points in week 1. So I think I'm comfortable dipping in a little bit to the dead zone guys. But can Cam Scatterboo be the guy you really wanted to have? Because at the end of the season, he was scoring 15 to 20 points a game. Yes, I still think there's a ton of upside to be had if you're going like in that true zero RB range. But I do think like we're maybe almost undervaluing projected points in the middle rounds, in that like the James Connors and the Alvin Kamaras can be the guys you needed to chaperone your fun running back picks that you hammered in rounds 10 through 15 through the first like 2 months of the season. Just take your medicine a little bit with one of these not fun running backs who now go relatively cheap because everyone wants to draft like Jerry Jeudy and Jacoby Myers. They're now reasonably priced, where they used to be like James Conner coming off of what he did last year, which was fine. It was like 1,500 yards from scrimmage, I think like 16 PPR points per game. It was good. Probably didn't like outright win you your league, but it carried you to get Bucky Irving, who won you your league. Like Bucky Irving was not like, it was a frustrating, not very fun roster for like a month and a half or 2 months. But if you James Conner your way to a Bucky Irving championship, that's what you want. So I definitely think I still want to be very cautious, quote, loading up. I'm just not loading up on this zone of running backs. But I do think that there's some value to be had, which I think we missed on last year, some value to be had in like the Alvin Kamara and James Connors when the market gives you that value. It is weird. Like there are still players we don't do this for. Josh Jacobs goes at the 2-3 turn, like, and he barely outscored on a points per game basis guys like Alvin Kamara and James Conner. But he's like a year or 2 younger than them. And so we're like, well, he's never falling off. And James Conner's guaranteed to fall off. But like, so we still do this. I still think there are like dead zone type backs, but some of them we have now conceded that they're fully dead and they're never going to be any good. And if you just stretch your definition of zero RB a little bit, you can use James Conner to get your fun running backs to the fantasy playoffs.
We've come to the conclusion that Kyle likes James Conner.
He's the one. He's the last of them. Like I think you can lump in like a Tony Pollard. Somehow DeAndre Swift survives the draft as a guy you can lump in as the projected points guy.
I don't think he's survived in 2 seasons. There's another shoe to fall there.
Like who would he though? Like,
I think it's going to be one of the Seahawks running backs, either Charbonnet or Walker. There was some rumblings, during the draft and post-draft, but I did see some over the last 24 hours. Apparently, there's been some conversations. It may not happen, but I think that would be great for, well, not for Swift, but for either of the Seahawks running backs and them in both situations. It'd probably be good for Damon Martinez as well to have an opportunity with Seattle. So I think that would be great. Just going through them, I named, or I said the amount that are going in those rounds, but like when we look even into the 5th round, Travion Henderson, who you talked about in the last show, has not been one of your kind of prime targets, said it nicely for this season. But you've Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, Chuba Hubbard, and Judkins. And out of that, like, I'm looking at Hubbard as a possible option, but the rest I'm not overly, pushed about. But then you have like Caleb Johnson, and the 6th, you have David Montgomery, RJ Harvey, James Conner. So you have RJ Harvey and James Conner there as what targets that I would have. But then it is Swift, Pollard, Jones in the 7th, probably nothing there. It's Pacheco, Warren, Harris, Tyrone Tracy in the 8th, and then you're into Scatterboo and Brian Robinson in the 9th. It's not exciting high upside profiles that are littered throughout that area. So it is going to be interesting. So to go on the flip side now, and look at the wide receivers from the early rounds, in terms of the wide receiver targets that you would have, and then the talent, obviously that fits into the target part of the equation. Where's the wide receiver cliff for you? I would be kind of looking always at the cliff as like, I want to have between 4 and 6 wide receivers at this particular point, where it kind of drops off to where you're like, these guys are no longer starters, but there is some upside playing along. Where's that cliff for you in 2025?
I had somewhere around George Pickens, because like you said, targets are somewhat a talent stat. They're very much a talent set to some degree, although.
And when I mean target, I mean your targets, like who you're trying to draft, not the team's going to give them targets.
Well, also that also works for what I was saying, because you want to be targeting talented players, like, that's what you're alluding to. And for someone like George Pickens, I'm pretty sure he's good at football. Like all of the advanced numbers like him, his problems early in his career that we didn't love about him, that he was like a contested catch guy, he's largely graded extremely well in all the separation stuff now. And I'm confident a team thinks he's talented in that last year they ran the entire offense through him. So, and of course they add DK Metcalf now, but I still think it's reasonable at this price when he can be your wide receiver 6, or I could literally be beyond that, but let's just say he is. I think he is like the final player. He checks two of the 3 boxes. Pretty sure he's good. Pretty sure his team wants to throw to him, and his offense is good as the box he doesn't check, right? Like Jaden Reed, I'm pretty sure this guy is good, but I'm actually not so sure. But his offense does not want to throw the ball to him because they don't even play him in a full-time role. His offense just doesn't want to throw the football in general. They love running the football. So, and they literally told us that they don't think they have enough wide receiver firepower because they drafted 2 wide receivers in the first 100-something picks, whatever it was. So, he checks one of the boxes, and I love him. But guys who check multiple boxes, Calvin Ridley kind of checks multiple boxes. He's going to dominate targets. He's all right. I don't know if I say he's good. It's a decent situation, maybe not the best situation, but I think once you get past Pickens, I can have a lot of questions about your talent and your situation and your ability to earn targets. So I think after Pickens is where I'm really starting to push the gas pedal on these running backs. So probably want one boring, not that fun running back, like you said, Chuba Hubbard, projected for 23 fantasy points at the end of the year. He was a guy who I did not draft any of because I was totally Jonathan Brooks pilled. And obviously, just bad luck sort of on that in terms of the second injury, at least. Bad luck on that. So I was not taking any Chuba Hubbard. He's one of the guys where you'd show up to the best ball finals, a 400-person pod, and he's 30% owned. And you're like, I'm dead. I don't have the guy who projects for 24 points. And he was stone cold free. And now he goes this is a guy who in 2015, this guy goes the 2-3 turn every single time. Now he's reasonably priced. It's not my favorite click on the board. I'm not doing it all the time, but get a decent amount of fantasy points with one boring running back pick, and then you still get to go more wide receivers. You can still get a Pickens on the roster, who I like a lot, who I think kind of ends the tier of wide receivers that I'm I can probably start this guy week 1 and feel good about it, probably start him all year and feel good about it. And then at that point, you have license to go Bashal Tutin and Zach Charbonnet, guys who I don't know what their role looks like in week 1, but I know when it hits, it is fun.
Yep. It's interesting when we're working through it as well. You mentioned some of the scenarios there. I think I might go beyond that. And the part is the cliff definitely has started that. There's players that I'm not targeting at all. And then beyond that, it becomes more and more players that I'm not targeting at all. But, I'm going to be etching my way into some Jaden Reed shares. He's going after that. There's going to be certain players that you're going to.
Is he good? I think he's good. But why don't the Packers think he's good?
But I also think that this is a trouble for Josh Jacobs. I do think the moves in the draft with him and Golden are. The Packers have to be going to switch up the design of the offense if they are leaning that way. I think the Love injury played a part in it. They got reliant on what was happening with Josh Jacobs. The wide receivers couldn't catch the ball, which was obviously an issue trying to move the chains. And then they leaned on Jacobs to the detriment of the offense. People listening to the show are probably fed up of me, regurgitating that line over and over. But the likes of Burden, who you talked about, has been one of the most underrated post-draft players, going after. There's certain players, and if you get it, even if it's Daniel Jones ahead of Anthony Richardson and Indy, I would like to have Josh Downs on the roster. But I do agree with you where that tier cuts off of there's more question marks. Reed is heavily discounted because last season really didn't work out in the way they wanted. You've Brandon Ayuk coming off injuries, Stephon Diggs coming off injury, changing teams, Cooper Kupp changing teams, lots of stuff like that. So the interesting part is in those drafts is the versus picks. Do you want the wide receiver or the bad running back? Like which one do you want to add to the roster? Maybe pivot to a different position. We've kind of talked through it, but I think overall, how do you feel about the wide receiver talent in that earlier portion before the cliff? You know, the rounds 3 through 6 versus previous years. I feel like we have kind of almost there is points being scored, but there's almost like the veterans who are at the end tail of their career are backdooring their way into the 4th round. You know, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, you know, in the 4th round, which feels like we could have moved past this multiple seasons ago, but the veterans are kind of holding on. And I mentioned about last year's rookie class really delivering at wide receiver, but kind of some of the players in between that are not delivering. So you have like the likes of Chris Godwin, DK Metcalf in the 6th round. There's quite a an influence of the older statesmen of the wide receiver position here. How are you feeling though about drafting those guys? Are you concerned with that age cliff, or have they just defeated Mother Nature?
I mean, all of them will only defeat Mother Nature for so long. And I think because, like I said, like even though like I'm making the case for drafting one unsexy running back through like 7 rounds pretty heavily, that leaves you with a lot of other rounds to draft wide receivers. And I'm not doing it in the first like 3 rounds. Like I have not drafted much Josh Jacobs, not drafted much Jonathan Taylor. Like I'm not dipping into running back still like that early. It's like 1 pick. But that all be said, I am drafting a lot of wide receivers, especially because like I think there's another cliff that happens much earlier once
cliff like, is more defined.
I think once like Ladd McConkey, AJ Brown, and Drake London go off the board, it's like those 3 guys. You could probably lump JSN with them. I don't know.
I would put T. Higgins in there. I'll and maybe we'll give Garrett Wilson. But
don't put Garrett Wilson in there. No. All right.
The back end of the 2nd round, it's it falls.
Ladd McConkey's rookie season was like better than Garrett Wilson has ever done.
I know that.
Ever.
So, give up on Wilson. Come on, man.
He's good. I think he's good, but like he's also in the exact same situation where like I think he's good. I think he's going to dominate targets, and the quarterback sucks. Like we're getting it again. We're getting 1,100 yards again. You get 1,100 yards, and you'll like it. Ladd could give you 1,500. Like another guy, like you look at guys who are really good as rookies. They're typically really good, and a lot of them find another gear. A lot of them find that 1,500 yard season. It's like once those guys go off, like I'm really trying to get probably just 3 receivers or 2 receivers and a tight end through 3. So if I'm loaded up on receivers early, like what do I need a DK Metcalf on my roster for if I'm getting to start T. Higgins as my wide receiver 3, or if you only play 2 receivers, like as my flex, right? Like what do I need a Chris Godwin for? Chris Godwin was really good at the start of last year, so maybe he just comes back to that role, but the Ibuka pick doesn't seem like it would indicate maybe he will. So what do I need some of these guys on my roster for? The only like the ones that I'm really targeting are the guys who could outscore T. Higgins, who could outscore JSN in this range. And that's like a little bit earlier, or actually right in the same range, is like both Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice could be guys.
Xavier Rice is going to have a good season this year.
Dude, if you put them 2 into the same player, they would be the best player in the NFL. They would be so good. If you put Rashee Rice, if you like look at what Rashee Rice did in terms of his rookie year, another guy like I have a type. Guys who are really good when they're young, like guys who are really good when they're young, have a great track record, and not only continuing to be really good, potentially being great. 2.2 yards per route run as a rookie is a very strong number. One of the best yak receivers in the NFL as a rookie. Obviously didn't see much of him last year, but 3.2 yards per route run in his 2nd season is dominant. Like that's what the best receivers in the NFL look like. I know our sample size is obviously small because he played 3 games. I don't even know if he recorded a stat in the 4th game or whatever.
But if you look at him from his rookie year post thereby, he like took over.
Another thing too, he has the trajectory. Like he is on the trajectory. It isn't just on the whole, but it was like we saw him go from like, he's all right and he should get more work in the first 2 months to like they gave him more work and it rocked at the final month and then into the playoffs a little bit too. Like this is what like an ascendant superstar looks like. And all the Twitter doctors seem to be like not awfully concerned about his injury impacting week 1. Like it's definitely still a possibility, but the more and more that we get info on his injury, I just grow a little bit less concerned. It's still a risk for sure. And of course he's got suspension risk, but again, the Twitter lawyers are like, this case just continues getting the can is kicked down the road. At some point it could just become a 2026 problem instead of a 2025 problem. In terms of redraft, any form of redraft, that's obviously does not matter to me at all. So the risk keeps going down just a little bit. Like every information update we get seems to be generally positive on the idea that he'll play 17 games or 16 and that maybe he won't miss week 1. So if you give me the bet on like supreme talent in this range, that's a guy who could be scoring as the wide receiver 5 overall. Like that's a guy who, even if I have a T Higgins on my roster, even if I have a Terry McLaurin on my roster, he could jump that guy and maybe even jumps the guy after that. So those are the kind of bets that I want to be making. I mean, you can make the same case about Xavier Worthy. Like it's rookie season wasn't that good, but like he really did seem to start to figure some stuff out in the second half of the season, obviously crushed in the Super Bowl. And he was a good, like I really liked him as a prospect. Like he was a true freshman breakout at a Power 5, now Power 4 school. And he gets first round capital. Like that's what good players look like. And the rookie season wasn't great, but at least he ended on a high note. And he ended on a high note for not just the one game, but he played better in the second half of the season.
They started to use him much better in terms of shorter routes and kind of some of the stuff they were given to Rice. And the rookie season could have been a lot better if him and Mahomes could connect on some of those deep passes where he could like blow them past the defense. But they're going back to back wide receiver 21 and 22, and the players that I'd be trying to target in that range are those guys who could be going in the second round next year. You're trying to look at those guys that are pushing up, and that's where the wide receiver is deep conversation. I think it's interesting. Like the cliff is at the back of the second round. And then there's a couple of other tier breaks as you walk through it. But I do think you need to have at least 2 wide receivers through 3 rounds, if not potentially have 3. And then when you're getting to that next cliff that we mentioned, down into the 8th round, I think you need to have 6 wide receivers through that point because it gets pretty nasty after that. But I think the decision, if you aren't going running back early, is the elite tight ends. Over at the FFPC, it's tight end premium. There's only 2 tight ends going in round 1, 1 going in round 3, 1 going in round 4, 1 going in round 5. So there's only 5 through 5 rounds, which is kind of interesting. Are you thinking this year is a year to bypass those, or is there any that you're targeting in that range? Obviously, drafting those 0 RB teams, the elite tight end becomes a cornerstone. You've Brock Bowers, Trey McBride in the first, George Kittle in the 3rd, and then Sam Laporta, TJ Hawkinson coming in the 4th and 5th. How are you feeling about the tight end this year?
The first 2 especially are like I think there's a strong case in tight end premium. Just take Brock Bowers 101. He looks like his production looks like that of Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors, and we're like, well, he's a tight end though, so the ceiling's probably capped. I don't know, man. Maybe it's not. Like maybe this truly generational. I think he is probably the best tight end prospect of my lifetime. Maybe you could give that to like Kyle Pitts, because I believe Kyle Pitts did the athletic testing, was like a super RAS guy too. We know that matters. But one of the 2 best prospects at his position.
One of them is a better footballer than the other.
Yeah, one of them is good, one of them is bad. That's probably the biggest difference.
As much as we love Kyle Pitts, and he had a 1,000-yard rookie season, the actual watching the eye test, one of these guys is much better than the other. The other thing is you get Geno Smith coming in, which I don't care what way you want to rank Geno Smith as a quarterback, versus the carousel of quarterbacks last year with the Las Vegas Raiders is amazing. Yeah,
man. Like Desmond Ridder got snaps for this team last year. I don't think he made any starts technically, but I do think he came in at the end of a game or 2. Like Desmond Ridder, who was traded and cut before the start of the season, and he was like, oh, Desmond Ridder's cleaning up in the 4th quarter, and we're like, oh, thank God Aiden O'Connell's back in this game. Thank God Aiden O'Connell's healthy. That was the good outcome. And now, like you said, I don't care where you rank Geno Smith. Some people think he's really good. Some people he's complete spreadsheet myth. He's fine. I think he's perfectly fine, and perfectly fine. The 14th best quarterback play would be a massive upgrade for this team. Would be an insane upgrade, and all they did was add Jack Besh as far as target competition goes. This is the setup of all setups for a tight end to have a 1,500-yard season, and he's the player who would be the one we would project to do it. So I think it feels dumb because Saquon's awesome. Bijan's pretty good too, but I probably would just take him at 102. I don't really think there's a strong I don't think there's a strong case against it. It's fine also to take the running backs ahead of him because they're both really good. But I would be taking him at 102. And Trevor Browder is the 9th highest scoring tight end premium player, period, flex wise at least, last year, and doesn't go 9th overall. Gives you a massive positional advantage. Or if you just put him in the flex, you would just take him earlier anyways. And he didn't score any touchdowns. To me, those 2 are very obvious ones. The middle range, again, this is sort of an adage we had a few years ago. It was yeah, man, Gronk, you can kind of just pay any price for him. It's perfectly fine. Jimmy Graham, it's perfectly fine. And the moment you get to random tight end 4, that guy's floor. Yeah, that guy's floor ceiling combo is not nearly as fun. The mid range of the tight end ones is just not nearly, it doesn't give you the advantage. The floor is not worth it because you can just stream the guy who scores a random touchdown that week. And I kind of feel that way with a Laporta, who's good. He's perfectly fine. But he should go like 7 rounds after Brock Bowers. Like the gap should not be that close because he's just perfectly fine. Or maybe the argument is like some of the also not that fun tight ends should come up a little bit. But like, what has Laporta shown us that like he's a superstar that he should go within 10 picks?
Laporta's rookie season was sensational. Like he came into last year. We had like where we're with Trey McBride now. We had like that's where we were with Sam Laporta like in our minds last year. And Trey McBride obviously had a massive season, but the problem for him versus those other two is the volume for targets. Sam Laporta is now competing with a lot of talent. The other two guys aren't. And that's where I think George Kittle in the 3rd round becomes undervalued. I think he should be going in the 2nd round of these drafts because he doesn't have Debo there anymore. He's feasted without Debo in that 49ers offense. I think that you're right that the other one should pull up, and I think that's what makes it interesting. I think that Kittle should be closer to the top 2, and I think then Laporta should probably be going in the 3rd round. But the problem is when we're talking about these cliffs and where the value drops off, that is where if you look at like George Kittle, it's like T. Higgins is gone, right? We're going to the tight end. That's where he's going in terms of this format. Then there's like another tier break when you get to those veterans like Devontae Adams, DJ Moore, Mike Evans before the 2 Kansas City Chiefs guys. Okay, I'll take the tight end there. And I think that's the way the ADP is playing out. But yeah, the first 2 guys that you mentioned are in there. I think I'm going to be big on Kittle throughout the entire season. Laporta is just the competition for targets is the issue for him.
All right. The issue is like not nearly as good as George Kittle. Like he's like, to be fair, George Kittle is probably the most efficient, like on a per route, maybe on a per target basis too. Yak, if you just want to do like Yak stats, probably the most efficient receiver tight end of my lifetime, if not ever. Like his career yards per route run, we don't have like, we only have this data for like 15 or 20 years, but he's like the career leader by a wide margin yards per route. It's like, I'm setting a high bar to clear, but like Laporta's rookie season was very good, but like, it was nowhere near what we see from someone like Brock Bowers, who literally set the record.
No,
so
it was a lot of also like in the end zone receptions or catches inside the 20. It's not like we didn't really fully see this with Brock Bowers. We seen a touchdown last year against the Denver Broncos where it's like, you catch a slant and you're gone. And we haven't seen that from Laporta in terms of the athleticism. And we see that with Kittle obviously as well.
Yeah, they're just so incredibly dynamic. Where I think Laporta is like a good pass catcher. He gets open with ease, but he's like, I don't know if he's ever going to be one of the guys who like dominates targets and pushes beyond 2 yards per route run. Where like I think it was like 1.7 as a rookie, which is a really good number for a rookie tight end, and doing it as a starter too. It wasn't doing it as a part-time player, but it's not something that says like this guy, I'm locking him in as a superstar, right? And then last year was really not good. So I think he's a good tight end, but do I think he's great? I don't think he's great yet. I still think like guys who are as good as he is early in his career can go on to be great, but I don't think he's great yet. And I definitely don't think he can earn a ton of targets just because of the situation he's in. I think in a different situation, he would probably earn a lot of targets. Good players do that. It's just a bad spot where it's not a super high volume passing attack. He's not the number 1 receiver with tight end eligibility. I don't even know if he's like the number 2 wide receiver or target earner though. Maybe he is, but maybe he's not. So it's like, he's got a lot of headwinds coming against him that like, Kittle can be his team's number 1 wide receiver, and he's one of the best tight ends of my lifetime. Like I like Kittle easy, take him ahead of where he goes in terms of tight end premium and in redraft or in just like regular best ball stuff too. I take a ton of them.
We've got a yes or no answer here. Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, George Kittle are elite tight ends, and that's where the tier break is.
Super. I know. Yes. No.
Yes or no
yes. Elite. Yes. Sorry. Yes. Answer is yes.
They are the 3 elite tight ends for this year. Yes. That's what we're going with. Last question before we close out. Elite quarterbacks, there's 5 going between round 3 and 4 there. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Jaden Hurts, and Jalen Hurts, sorry. When we look at those, I feel like at the price, like I would love to draft Jaden Daniels again this year, but I got him last year. In terms of like, I'm bypassing those to fill out the roster in the way I want to get that elite tight end, to get the wide receivers, and then maybe even if you do go for one of those running backs in that range, are you drafting any of those guys? Are you sliding by?
Yeah, it sounds like we're probably doing the same thing where like I think receiver dries up early. It's in a range where like I don't hate adding a running back there. And like you said, I think the elite tight ends are like the 3 that we've deemed elite are like a priority to get to. Like I want to be overexposed on Bowers, on McBride, and even on Kittle at a price that's a lot more than it was last year, where then it comes kind of hard to fit in the elite quarterback. And I don't think it's a bad year to like dip into the deeper range of the like the QB 13-14 kind of guys. Like there are some like Dak Prescott, didn't he like lead the league in passing yards 2 years ago? Something like at his best is a very good. Where do you think wherever you think we were drafting CJ Stroud last year, add 10 picks to it. He was going so high. Like, and maybe he is that good. And like, I think Jordan Love is awesome at football. Like, this dude can make every single throw. He's got like great pocket presence and movement. I just think like he is a great talent. The fantasy production did not match that last year. Like you said, he was banged up and they're like, we're just going to run the ball 100 times. But they have all signs in terms of their actual actions have said that they seem to value throwing the ball more than they did last year. I think there's a lot of upside. Like even like it's not fun, not sexy, but like Jared Goff is pretty live to throw 40 touchdowns every year in this offense. Maybe he's less live than he was in previous years without Ben Johnson, but also maybe having the best offensive line and one of the best pass catching cores in the NFL and being solid yourself also lends itself to a lot of fantasy points. So I think it's a good, not great, but a pretty good year to dip into this range.
Yeah, the final thought here is those guys that you mentioned are all going in round 11. Jared Goff is going in round 9. Drake May is going in round 10. Brock Purdy in round 10. Justin Herbert in round 10. When we look at that, my takeaway is that the 0 RB rounds are now the perfect place to select your quarterbacks. The quarterback window will sit there. Bypass those elite quarterbacks and set yourself up. 0 RB rosters can be constructed in 2025. Will you co-sign that with me? 0 RB is still the way to go?
For sure. Yeah.
We are closing out there. Kyle is at Kyle Tweets here on Twitter. You can find all his work over at RotoWorld. He has his rankings all updated. It's been an absolute pleasure, Kyle, having you on the show. Thank you again for taking the time to jump aboard.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
And we will close it there. My name is Colm Kelly. You can follow me at Overtime Ireland. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast feed to get all the shows once they're available. Until next time, have a good one.